Is going on, folks? Will Turbid, aka the reincarnation of L. Ron Hubbard. Fake Mike! Oh, and I caught it. It's gonna be a good show. I caught that bitch. Real news. We are here live. WWE superstar Val Venis, aka Sean Morley, two-time Intercontinental champ. If you missed our earlier episode on Auditing America, go back a week or two and check that out. We're going to be asking totally different questions tonight and focusing on totally different things. And I want you guys to share this video because this is, as far as I know, unless you're, I don't know, this is like the first ever interview, I think, where Val's announced some of this information that he's been working on for a very long time. So share this video. This is incredible information. It took me a day or two to get this information, right? And everybody knows I have about a 97 IQ on a good day. So hopefully we'll break this down for people. Let's see. Everyone share this video. Thank you very much. And let's start off with a couple of wrestling questions because I want people to be able to gather in so we can get some more of the nuggets in because I want as many people as possible to get eyeballs on this. Yes, what's up, Food Toy? What's up, Grim Reekin? What's up, everybody? Yeah, share the video. We're going to tease you for a little bit, and we're going to get to the juicy stuff. Well, I mean, this is all pretty much juicy stuff, but I wanted to ask you, I didn't get a chance to ask you this last time. You know, what was one of the most unexpected or surprising things about being in the WWF, WWE that you just like were totally surprised by or shocked at?
When I first got to WWE, I had been to a lot of other territories prior to that as I climbed the ladder. So by the time I got to WWE, the only thing left that really surprised me was the size of the operation. Japan has huge companies. The company I was working for in Mexico was a huge company. And when I made it to those first two companies, like in Mexico, I worked for CMLL. In Japan, I first worked for All Japan Pro Wrestling. And then years later, worked for New Japan Pro Wrestling for a heartbeat. Those are huge companies. But when you get to WWE, it's on a whole nother level. And so you really start to... You think you're used to massive companies and the operations that are behind the scenes that support what fans experience out in the arena when they're watching the performers in the ring. The amount that goes into the back end of the show is far bigger in WWE. And that really shocked me. It's a massive operation. A lot of talented people that never really get recognized and are never given their due. But there's a lot of people in the background that go into making the WWE products, and it was surprising to see the number of people and the manpower that was required to bring Monday Night Raw to the people and bring SmackDown to the people. And to bring the pay-per-views to the people. It's just, it's incredible when you see it on a weekly basis at TV and the monthly pay-per-views. And then you get to the Super Bowl of pro wrestling, which is WrestleMania. And when you think you've seen the biggest company have the biggest backstage infrastructure and manpower, then you get to WrestleMania, and oh my God, it's just I remember my first WrestleMania being backstage. It's like TV times 10. It's an incredible amount of manpower to put on these shows.
You've been wrestling for a while before that. Did you get nervous at WrestleMania? I mean, that's every young wrestler's dream is, visualizing being there at WrestleMania. What was that like for you just to be at WrestleMania? I mean, there's millions of young wrestlers out there that will never get that chance to be able to do that. And I want to talk a little bit about before that too, but what was that feeling like, arriving at WrestleMania?
It was the very first WrestleMania was surreal. I was kind of in a daze with it. Now, mind you, by the time I made it to WWE, I had been wrestling about 11 years at that time, full time. Puerto Rico, Europe, Mexico, Japan. And the novelty of making it to WWE had somewhat worn off. You're used to big crowds, especially in Mexico and Japan. It's one of those things where performing in front of a uber large crowd, that novelty kind of wore off over time. It became more. I don't want to say it became more like a job because I enjoyed performing. I would still enjoy performing to this day, but the exuberance of it all kind of wears off. When I got to WWE, to me, it was, well, I'm wrestling in front of another large crowd. And by that time, it was just a daily occurrence. You know, you had massive crowds in Japan, massive crowds in Mexico. And, but when you get to WrestleMania, it's different. Once you get to the city, usually we're there for the whole week before the Sunday that WrestleMania was going to air. And, the whole from the time you roll into that city, there's something different. There's an aura about WrestleMania that brings wrestling fans from all over the world to fly into that city, the hosting city for WrestleMania. And there's events going on all week, like Fan Fest, where fans can go to different venues. They can meet with the different talent, pictures, autographs. They can sit down and talk with the talent. And it's the whole city is taken over by WrestleMania, and the aura around WrestleMania is unlike any other wrestling show on the face of God's green earth. It's an amazing experience.
And yeah, as you alluded to, you'd been wrestling before under different names and characters. How did the Val Venis character come about?
So there was a writer named Vince Russo, and he was the head writer for WWE. At the time, he was, from what I could tell, very tight with Vince McMahon. He was basically, he had Vince McMahon's ear. And Russo was an envelope pusher in his writing. He was very prolific in coming up with great story ideas, not just for a couple of the matches on the card, but everybody on the card was involved in a storyline. And so he was one of those guys that just kept everybody involved in their storylines, and he was an envelope pusher with those storylines. And I really think the team of Vince Russo with Vince McMahon worked real well, because Vince Russo, when he's writing storylines, would push the envelope so far ahead, and then Vince McMahon would pull it back on those chains just enough to make it acceptable. And so I think that combination of Vince pushing 10 miles ahead and then Vince McMahon pulling him back a few miles and putting forth to the fans what they really settled on for a storyline, and it worked out really well. They're a great combination, but it was Vince Russo, from what he was saying to me when I flew up to Connecticut to get to the television studio for WWE. We had done some vignettes to promote the character coming to WWE, I guess. Or no, I'm sorry. This is before they actually developed the character. This is before they even knew the Val Venis name. And we went from the TV studio back to the main offices, the WWE offices. And so while I'm sitting in the car with Vince Russo, Russo's driving, I'm talking to Russo about politics. And all he could think in his head was, this guy just looks like a porn star. And so from what I understand, he, over time, he came up with the name.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Val. You were talking about politics?
Yes.
So this is awesome, guys. Because he snuck this in too, because you know, when I was younger, growing up, I was a big fan of Val. As I said, you know, I went to the Providence Civic Center 99, 98. When Val came out, I had the towel, I had my shirt off. You know what I'm saying? I'm a huge fan. By the way, I want to say thank you to Richard from Gematria Effect News. he's helped me get this interview, and he's a big fan. Says to say hi to you too. And when I was back, and I was researching more, going back through clips and Val's YouTube channel, which is in the description. I just put it on screen. It's the top link in the description. Everyone go subscribe, leave him a comment, share all of his videos, and we're going to be talking about some deep stuff too. So stay tuned and get everybody's eyeballs on this now. But I was going back and looking through these videos, and I'm seeing Val like talking about the IRS, and I'm like, yo, I had no idea back then. So I'm just laughing now. Val's over here trying to have a character where he's going to try to wake people up, and they're like, you're a porn star. I just think that's hilarious.
Yeah, you know, when I was talking politics with Russo, because at the time I was already pissed off with taxation and all that. It was at the point where I was working in Mexico and in Japan, so I was making decent money, and you know, it was tax season was coming up. And so I was pissed off about it, and I was kind of ranting, I guess, to Russo. But he didn't really compute anything I was saying. All he kept thinking in his own mind is, this guy just looks so much like a porn star. And so we went back to the TV studio. We met with Vince McMahon. We did a couple other things. The Val Venis character I hadn't even heard of yet. And then I flew back to Mexico because I still had another, I guess, about 6 months to work in Mexico before I could actually start with WWE. And so while I was in Mexico, I had already signed with WWE, but while I was in Mexico, I still didn't have a character for WWE yet, but we had some time. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, just as I was getting ready to walk out of the door of my room, the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was Vince McMahon. And he was in a conference with Vince Russo, and they started telling me about, hey, we got this character, we want to shoot it by you, see what you think, if you feel comfortable playing this character, then maybe we can move forward with it. And I remember Vince McMahon saying specifically, if you don't feel comfortable with this character, you have to let us know so we can think up of a different character, because it's vitally important that you feel comfortable with the character you're playing. If you don't feel comfortable, the fans will know it, and it won't translate. It'll be a waste of time and a waste of money, which made total sense. And I said, all right, well, shoot, let me hear this character. And I was a little nervous at first, like, what are they going to make me, right? And so Vince McMahon, he says to me on the phone, okay, the character's name is Val Venis. The last name is spelled Venis. And I remember kind of going, okay. And he goes, now Val Venis was a former film star turned pro wrestler. And the first thing that popped into my head was, Hogan did the Hollywood Hogan thing. Jesse Ventura did the whole movie star Jesse Ventura thing. And in my head, I'm thinking, this has already been done. They're just trying to rehash another film guy turned pro wrestler. I mean, it just, at first, it didn't make any sense to me. But then Vince McMahon says, actually, Val Venis is a former adult film star turned pro wrestler. And that's when I went, that's never been done before. Yeah. And so he started breaking down. They just had a very general idea of what they were looking for in terms of that character. And they said, the character was a big star in the porn industry, and he's got a bunch of wrestling experience, and now he's coming in to take over the WWE, penetrate the WWE. And of course, there's all kinds of innuendos you can play off of that.
And Vince saying that over the phone to you too. That's so funny.
Oh yeah. And so I started thinking, okay, porn star. I've been watching pro wrestling my whole life. I ain't ever seen anybody play that character. And so then I started thinking, get to work with hot women all the time. Man, this sounds like it could be a hell of a lot of fun. So I told Vince, I said, I'm in. You don't got to twist my arm anymore. I'm in. And Vince, being the businessman he is, he goes, look, you're not in yet. I want you to ponder the character, take 24 hours, think about it for the day, really think about how you could develop this general outline of the character. We'll talk again tomorrow. And if you still feel comfortable playing the character, then we'll move forward with it. Right. I mean, I already knew I felt comfortable playing that character. All I thought about was how fun it was going to be. And so we talked again the next morning, and that's how it all got started. I said, I don't feel any different than I felt when you first told me the character yesterday. I'm ready to go. And so he goes, okay, you know, basically get a couple days off from Mexico, come back up to New York. We'll film a bunch of vignettes that will air every week while you're still down in Mexico wrestling. And so I flew up to New York. We, you know, banged out a bunch of vignettes that would air every Raw. You know, Val Venis coming to USA Network. And so, yeah, that's how it all started. It was Vince Russo. I was pissed off about taxation, and I was ranting to him about politics and how these bastards think they can just rob our paycheck like that at will. And he, in his mind, just kept thinking, this guy just looks so much like a porn star. And that's how it was born. And then, of course, as we were doing the vignettes, more was developed. Like the very first vignette I did was with a couple of Scores girls at the WWE television studios in a shower. And I come stepping out of the shower, and the first thing I do is grab a towel off the warming rack and wrap it around my waist, and then walk up to the camera and go, hello, ladies. And when we stopped, like we were done doing that segment, like that vignette, we went out of the restroom or the shower room to watch what we just recorded back on the monitor, to see if we should redo it, if there's anything that needs to be replaced or whatever. And as we're watching it back, Vince Russo's sitting here like this, and he hears me say, hello, ladies. And he goes, I think you need to do that every time. Like, let's start every vignette off with hello, ladies. That's pretty catchy. So we had no intention. Like, it was just something that was wrote into the very first vignette. And it worked out so well when we heard it played back that we were like, let's keep that. And then I started thinking, I got a towel around my waist. I ain't never seen anybody walk down to the ring with a towel like they just stepped out of a shower full of birds. So we decided, hey, that should be part of my ring attire, just a basic white towel around my waist. And so everybody kind of agreed and liked it. And just little things like that developed as we were doing the vignettes. And of course, by the time it was time to, you know, walk down to the ring, even though the character still developed further, the basics were laid out that first night that I debuted against Too Cold Scorpio.
So what was it like when you first met Vince? I guess that was over the phone there. He seemed like, I guess in your initial interaction, maybe it was because business, but he seems like, at least then, pretty chill, like making you want to feel comfortable about that. But that's also for business purposes too, because, you know, it would be a total waste of money otherwise. What was
Vince? Well, you know, I met Vince prior to that. They flew me up from Mexico, so you know, I could wrestle in the ring on a dark match in Des Moines, Iowa. And then Vince invited me up to the television studios just to basically, they were doing camps up there. There was me, Edge, a couple other guys up there. And so I had met him before the phone call. We just didn't have a character or anything lined up at that point. And I still had about 6 months left in Mexico as well. So once I was done the camp up at the TV studio and I flew back to Mexico, he just told me to keep wrestling in Mexico until he called me, and they would develop a character. And sure enough, that morning at 7 o'clock in the morning came up, and you know, I was just about ready to walk out of that room to go to the gym. And the phone rang down in Mexico City, and it was Vince McMahon saying, okay, here's what we want to throw by you. And so, yeah, I had met him before he called me, but to hear him explain a character to me, you could tell that he had put a lot of thought into whether or not he should actually create a porn star character. I could tell at first that he was trying to debate, is this two envelope pushing or is this something that's just right? You know, that his brain's constantly clicking away. He's always analyzing and readjusting things. You know, he's a businessman, right? So he's just grinding 24/7.
All right, we'll get to maybe some more wrestling questions later. You guys hang around if you're just joining. Val Venis, two-time Intercontinental Champion, Tag Team Champion, European Champion. We're here live. We're going to switch gears. I want you guys to share this video. So, Val, you know, I had no idea that you're even talking politics and how much taxation sucks when you first got there. So that's awesome. And Val's been dropping knowledge that I didn't even know for years and years and years and years. And now Val has continued his activism. And, you know, he was trying to explain something to me the other day, and I've watched the video before. I didn't get it. He was like, all right, go back and watch that video again now that you've just listened to me, because I'm really dense, guys, right? So, yes, Audit Them says hi. Everyone says hi. Call the law to camera. Everyone, they love you. I'll open it up to people get your autograph tees. Yes, shout outs to everybody. I'll get your comments and questions. This is the most important thing I want to get to. I got a couple other questions too, but let's at least start down this path, because you've been doing activism now for quite some time. And it seems to me like you've come up with something that I've never heard before, at least put this way. It's a completely different perspective. And I think that and I want you guys to pay attention very closely here. I think that this is something that we could apply to several institutions and just get rid of them. So pay attention closely. This is a pretty interesting take, and this is one way of non-violently, I think, non-violently, of course, attacking the system.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. You know, it was one of those things where, you know, I had some events happen to me as a teenager. I'll just give you a quick basic rundown. Is back when I was a teenager, back in high school, I was not into politics at all. I was into wrestling, I was into motocross, I was into skiing, and I was into girls, right? Basic, you know, teenage crap, right? And but one thing I was also interested in was constantly keeping my pockets full of cash. And so there was one thing that I think that, and I'm not trying to put myself over or anything, because back then I didn't look at it as something that was a good thing. I just looked at it as something that was a necessity. If I wanted to buy the things that I wanted, needed, and desired, I needed to go out and work for them. And so, you know, I would go out and try to figure out ways to make money. And, you know, hay baling during the summertime, I'd work from 6:30 in the morning till 9:30 at night every single day in the summertime. And I was banking off of that. But when fall time would hit and the hay, you know, the barns and the mows were all built and my work was done, it was back to school. I had a wad of money, but I didn't have any more revenue coming in. And so until next summer. And so, you know, I'd go and work at a hockey rink to go to hourly wages again. Well, working at a hockey rink for hourly wages doesn't match the amount of money that a farmer will pay you to throw hay bales all day. You know, it's bone-breaking work, but man, they pay you like crazy. So I was a little disappointed with working at the hockey rink, you know, earning whatever it was. I can't even remember, what, $4 an hour, $5 an hour, something stupid like that. And so my third year, I'm sorry, not my third year. It was my second year of high school. I was cleaning out the eaves troughs of my parents' home. All the leaves fell off the trees in the fall and clogged up the gutters, right? So I get up on the roof and I'm taking a scoop and guttering all the leaves out of the gutters. And my neighbor sees me cleaning out my parents' gutters and says, "Hey, I'll pay you $50 if you go up on my roof after and do that." And I went, "Takes me 30 minutes to clean all this stuff. This guy's going to pay me $50 for 30 minutes of work. Okay." So I finished off my parents. I went over, I cleaned out the gutters. Took me like 20 minutes to do his. And he paid me $50. Now, back then, $50 is worth a shitload of value. I could buy a lot of goods with $50. Not so much now, but back then, $50 was a lot. So immediately, boom, I got my full-time gig. And every night after school, I would go around, I'd pick a community, I'd go around and knock door to door, and I'd say, hey, I'm going to be going nonstop on Saturday and Sunday this weekend, cleaning out eaves troughs. Can I scribble you in and put you down to come and clean your eaves troughs before the snow flies? And I'd be knocking on doors after school from maybe, I don't know, 4 o'clock till 6 or 7 every night. And by the time Wednesday hit, my weekend was full. And I mean full from like 7 a.m. till like 10 at night. And so I would do that for 6 or 7 weeks straight and add that to the money I made hay bale. And I was good for the rest of the year. Like to me, that was, I was busting my ass, but it was good. So I did that for 2 years. And then all of a sudden, I got a call from Revenue Canada, which is equivalent to the IRS down here in the United States. It's the exact same gangster thing, right? But I didn't know any different. I wasn't into politics. I didn't know about, all these things. All I was just a kid looking to make money. And so a Revenue Canada agent had to have a meeting with one of them, and they said, "Do you have a business license?" And I go, "No." I just went and knocked on doors and said, "Hey, can I clean your eaves troughs?" They said yes. They gave me money to do it. That was it. And so, okay, well, you're not working. You're operating an enterprise without a business license. Well, I guess what would happen is I was handing receipts to these people that I'd clean their eaves troughs, right? And I guess some of them were writing off the eaves trough cleaning service. And so that's how they just decided to investigate me. And I have no idea about any of this stuff. All I know is now I got Revenue Canada telling them I owe them a whole bunch of money, an enormous amount of money. And to the point where I was shocked. I was like, what the hell? So my last year of high school, that fall, I did the eaves trough cleaning again. Every single dime I made in eaves trough cleaning went to pay the 2-year back taxes for the eaves trough cleaning I did. So the last year I didn't make any money, and that did not sit right with me at all. There was something severely wrong with that in my mind, but I didn't know what it was. All I knew is I'm in Canada. I got Revenue Canada saying I'm obligated to pay what they say I'm obligated to pay, and it really pissed me off. But at the time, I didn't know you could really do anything about it. I was just mad about it. And but it didn't sit right with me. And so every once in a while, I would, pick up a few books on taxation, and none of them really explained how they had the right to do this. It just explained what they claimed our obligations were. And so I didn't get anywhere with this. It still doesn't matter how they could explain to me what my obligations were all day long. There was still something missing, and I couldn't put my finger on it. But that's kind of what sparked the kind of like the eyebrow raising, like what the hell are they doing? That's what sparked that interest a little bit. And then when I was 18, I read Atlas Shrugged, and that made a whole lot of sense. And
I'm
I
sorry
just
to
started.
interrupt you again, Val, because I just want to make it perfectly clear. So you were a minor when you were doing this, and they decided to extort you as a minor. Like, I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible. It's one thing if you're 24 years old and you got a few trucks and whatever, and I can understand that. I can understand the mentality. But you're a minor. I mean, that's a few years older than them coming on your yard and toppling your lemonade stand. Like it's so crazy.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, and it just didn't sit right with me. But after I read Atlas Shrugged, which is just a novel, but it really depicts the relationship between government and private sector human beings. And when I started to look at that relationship that was depicted in the novel Atlas Shrugged, I started thinking in my mind, well, wait a minute. I've never looked at that relationship this way before. I've always looked at it from whatever our teachers told us. And so I started, that really began the rabbit hole, just spiraling down deep into the rabbit hole for years. And as you learn more, your positions change. And so as I was learning more and more and more, I went from being what you would consider, if you had to ask me in high school what my political positions were, even though I didn't even think about politics. You would have came away with concluding that, oh yeah, he's a hardcore socialist, because that's the way you're taught without ever putting any thought into it. You're just conditioned to be that way. In public education, media, mainstream media, universal health care in Canada, greatest healthcare system in the world, and you just believe it without ever putting any thought into it. And so as I went down that rabbit hole, you start to change your positions as you learn more. I went from being completely for the war on drugs to the point where I thought marijuana users should be sent up the river, to being completely against the war on drugs. And that's just a learning process. You learn facts. You're like, whoa, I was wrong about that. And so over time, my position slowly changed to go from what would be considered a left-wing socialist to more fiscally conservative, more socially liberal, eventually becoming a libertarian in my early 20s. And then I remained kind of a libertarian, a statist type libertarian, until I found Ron Paul. And then I became more of a hardcore libertarian. And then still something didn't sit right with me with having a state of any kind, even a libertarian state. Even though I would much rather have a libertarian state than what we have today, it's still something didn't seem right about having the state in the first place. And then years later, I found a guy named Mark Stevens, and I had heard the name Lysander Spooner sporadically throughout my libertarian years, because you go to libertarian get-togethers and you hear that name thrown around, but I never once looked into him. And so I was online one time. I was probably early 40s. I was online and I found a guy named Mark Stevens, and he had a YouTube channel where he was using the anarchist concepts of helping people defend themselves in traffic court. And his concepts were really drilling down to the core, the foundation of what the state's claims are against people. And the state's claims are you're obligated to obey the government's written instruments called statutory laws. And of course, in that case, it was he was helping people with tax law and traffic laws as well. And so, but he was arguing on a basis of legalese. He was still using all the legalese terms, jurisdiction, personam jurisdiction, subject jurisdiction. And so I was finding myself spending a whole lot of time going in to learn what the meanings of all these different legalese words were, so I could figure out what the hell he was talking about. I got the concept, but I didn't see how all these words and asking questions about these words made sense. That it was something I still had to figure out. There was something still missing. And one day I was super high. I was smoking a Canagar, and it was after work. I had a long day at work, so I'm kicked back, smoking a Canagar, and I'm just brainstorming. How is this working? And I'm listening to one of his YouTube things where he's helping a guy with traffic court, and I hear him talking about, you're asking the state what facts they rely on that would prove you're obligated to, or that would, I guess, how would he put it? He would put it as, what facts would you present this court that would prove that written instrument applies to me and establishes jurisdiction? And every time he would go back to using legalese, I'm focused on the legalese words. And one day I was really high, and as I'm listening to this, probably for, I don't know, the 100th time, I listened to, a bunch of his episodes over the years, it clicked. I went, obligation. He's literally saying that the state is claiming that we are obligated to obey their written instruments called traffic laws. And then I just went, boom, the light bulb went on. And I went, why am I spending all this time learning the meaning of all these different legalese terms when it's just a human being that is the plaintiff that's making the claim that I'm obligated to obey their written instrument called traffic laws? And I decided at that moment that I'm not going to play on the platform of legalese anymore. I'm going to argue on the platform where matters of fact reside. So the matters of legalese are, you got a plaintiff, you have a defendant, you have a judge. The judge is saying there's jurisdiction because we're in this geographical location, but all that stuff is spelled out in the written instrument, right? Well, I don't argue that anymore. What I do is I throw all that out the window and I argue on matters of fact. And the facts are, I'm a human being that another human being, which is the plaintiff, is making a claim against me that I'm obligated to obey their written instrument called traffic law. And once you break it down like that and keep it so simple that a third grader could understand it, now the ball's in your court, because you brought, everybody understands that human being right there that's sitting at the table, the plaintiff's table, is making a claim against me, Sean Morley, sitting at the defendant's table, that I'm obligated to obey that written instrument called traffic law. And if I ask the judge, which I've done, is the state making the claim that I'm obligated to obey their written instrument called traffic law? The judge, you might have to push him a little bit, but will say, yeah, that's the claim. Now we have framed the claim inside court. I'm never going back to legalese again. I want to see the facts that prosecutor relies on, that human being calling himself a prosecutor, what facts he relies on that he can present to this court right now in front of that judge and in front of rational human beings, and prove with facts that I am obligated to obey that man's written instrument called traffic law. And that is where the state fails every single time. They can't prove it. They have the ability to order armed men with badges on their chest to level their guns at you ultimately and force you to comply with their written instrument. And they do that because they think you are obligated to obey it. And then when you turn around and say, what facts can you prove that would prove that claim to be true? They turn around and they say that man right over there, and they'll point to a police officer that will come and arrest you if you don't comply with their written instrument. Well, if I told you, Will, that you're obligated to obey my written instrument that I just wrote out this afternoon, might have had a bunch of my friends do a little ritual thing, voting to see whether this should become valid, and guess what? They all did. And now, Will, you have to give me 50% of your paycheck. We have the written paper right here. You have every right as a human being to drag my ass in court and say, hey, that guy's trying to take 50% of my paycheck. He says he has it written down on a piece of paper, says I'm obligated to obey it. Can you force this guy to present facts to your courtroom that would prove I'm obligated to obey it? Because if there's facts proving I'm obligated to obey it, I'll obey it. But if I went to you, Will, and said, you're obligated to obey this written instrument, would you consider me a criminal? And the reality is you would. I'm an extortionist at that point. So when the government has the ability, because they do have the ability to order armed men to level their guns at you and force compliance, when they have the ability to do that, but they don't have the right, that makes them criminal. That is literally somebody that should be arrested on the spot for attempted extortion and put in a cell, like you or I would if we did it to someone else. In order for government to have the right to order their armed men to level their guns at you to force compliance, they have to be able to show in a court of law that you're obligated to obey their written instrument called traffic law in the first place. And that's where they fail. They literally only have the ability to level their guns at you without having the legitimate right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's so fundamental, and it's just and I kind of was like you during my path of waking up. I was a Ron Paul libertarian, but I always assume that it's just the state is there, and we have to have this oppressive government that does all this tyrannical stuff to us. I never assumed that what we actually wouldn't. We don't need a daddy government to tell us what to do. And the truth of the matter is, it's very fundamental. It's very fundamental. Where is the social contract that Val Venis or Fake Mike signed to say, "Oh yes, I'm going to adhere to all these laws"? And that's the premise.
Correct.
And I think what you're doing with this, and maybe if you want, and if we have time, we could even play a few clips, or if not, Val's got clips on his channel. Let me just put his channel up on screen right now. It's the link in the description, the top link in the description. He's done this in court and recorded in court, and I don't want to give a spoiler alert on what happened to some of these, but and this is hilarious too. The Brandon zombie dance. You guys got to check this out. And he's asking cops about this too. So the link's in the description. Everyone go subscribe and check these videos out. And what it's really doing is it's putting these people on the spot, saying, why do I mean, okay, I see that you have this law. This law is written out, and it says, yeah, if I don't come to a complete stop, or if I go 6 over the speed limit or whatever, okay, this is a law. And you're saying, okay, I broke your supposed law, but where is the evidence that I have to follow this law? I don't ever recall signing up and saying, hey, yeah, take my tax money to bomb brown kids in the Middle East, and to put a bunch of people in jail for weed, right? I don't ever remember saying, here, please take my money and destroy Yemen. I just didn't happen. But it's so fundamental. And I have a 84 IQ that it took me a minute to kind of go even get this. Guys, are you understanding this in the chat? Are you following along? Because Val explains it very well. Press 1 in the chat if you guys know what's going on here, because this is crazy. And the reason this is crazy is at least one of these cases has gotten dismissed because they didn't want to have to deal with this. And as I asked you the other day too, and it seems to happen, is when people like Val know his rights, they'll wait till everybody's out of the court because they don't want Val, all 6'4" of them, with his commanding voice, and he's just asking questions. He's being polite too, but he's firm in his questioning. They don't want people to see that. Like, holy shit, this is all a fraud.
Yeah, they don't want people seeing that. These were so. I'll tell you how I got into court. I spent probably at least maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years, intentionally trying to get a ticket. And every time I would see a cop on the side of the road, and I see him there with his little radar hiding in a corner somewhere, I'd go driving by, oh crap, there's a cop. I would turn around and I would fly by him trying to get a ticket. And I do U-turns where I'm not supposed to do U-turns right in front of cops. And for a year and a half, no matter what I did, I couldn't get pulled over. It's one of those things when you're trying to get pulled over, you're trying to get that ticket, you don't get pulled over. So then one night, I was it was 11. It was just after 11:30 in the evening, and I was driving back out to the country, and leaving the city after the gym, and heading back home. And I came up to a 4-way stop. And when I came up to that 4-way stop, I mean, this is out in the middle of the country. It's dark. There's nobody anywhere, right? And I've seen cops there before, hiding in a real dark area. And every once in a while, I would do a rolling stop there when I see them. And I'd come up. I said, "Oh, there's that cop." And so I wouldn't bring my car to a full and complete stop. I would literally sometimes just crawl right up to the stop sign, and without actually stopping, make the right-hand turn and continue on my way.
Hang on one sec, Val.
Me over. And then one night, I pulled up to that intersection, that 4-way.
Val, sorry to interrupt you, Val. Val,
and
can you hear me?
I didn't see the cop hiding there, so there's nobody around anyways, so I just did a rolling stop. But this one really wasn't intentional. It was just something I just did naturally. There's no other cars around. It's happened 11:30 at night. There's nobody around. It's all dark. So I came to the stop sign, kind of looked both ways, made the right turn, and I was rolling a little bit, right? So,
Val,
I don't know where the cop
can you
was
hear me,
hiding
Val?
that night.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Val? Your audio's
Hold
your
on.
audio's going to.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you got a little bit lower. Something went out.
Hold on. What happened here?
I can hear you, but it's really low. It was going in and out.
Oh, I can hear you now better.
That's perfect. Okay, great. So if you're just joining,
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay, so we just to recap real quick. First and foremost, we're here with WWE superstar Val Venis. His link is in the description, and he's teaching us a new way, which I think if we all start adopting this, we could potentially eliminate totally traffic court. So he's telling you the story right now. So share this video, get this out. We got 82. Everyone smack the like, leave me a comment, please, for Val, because this is powerful information. Yeah, it's awesome that one of my childhood heroes is here talking to me, but what's even more important is the information he's giving us. So let's get over 100 eyeballs watching this, and a big shout out to Yeah Right the Matrix, my brother. Everyone go check him out. So Val, before we kind of lost audio, Val was cruising the mean streets of Arizona looking to get pulled over, and he was spotting these little perverts tucked away in their corners, filming people and radaring people, and he just couldn't get lucky. But he said he saw a cop and he was about to come to a stop, but not a complete stop.
Yeah, so the few times that I saw the police officers hiding at that intersection late at night, I would intentionally I did rolling stops there regularly just because there's nobody there, But I would make sure I would do it more pronounced when the cop was there, hoping he'd jump out and grab me, right? And the few times that I saw the cop hiding, I made sure that I did a rolling stop, but they never jumped out to grab me. And I was like, damn it, I just cannot get pulled over to save my life. And so one night I came home from the gym, and as I was heading towards that intersection, I'm looking for that cop, and I didn't see any cop there. And so I was like, damn, no cop here. Oh, well. And I came up to the stop sign, made the right turn, and all of a sudden he pulls me over. I don't know where he was hiding that night. He wasn't hiding in his regular spot. To this day, I still don't know where he was hiding. But anyways, he jumped out like a cockroach and grabbed me. And so that's the one I have where on my video on YouTube, it'll say Val Venis versus the state of Arizona. And so that one I started recording. So I got the cop giving me the ticket, and I'm trying to ask him, are you making a legal determination? Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, that video is a great video. That was the first ticket that I got. And then 2 weeks later, I was driving to the dispensary, and when I would go underneath the bridge at 60, it's the I-60, I guess. They're not Interstate 60, just the 60 state route. And a lot of people would go underneath the bridge and do a U-turn up the road a little bit. But there is no U-turn sign just on the other side of that bridge, right? Well, for me, I would just go straight to work all the time. But I would always see a motorcycle police officer sitting behind a big sign on the side of the road during rush hour in the morning, waiting for people to make a U-turn around that U-turn sign. And so one day I was getting ready to go to work, and as I came onto the bridge and I'm heading, towards where I can see that no U-turn sign, I see the cop sitting there waiting. So I went, oh crap. And I took a look at the time, and I didn't have enough time to, bust out a U-turn right there. At least that's the first thought I had, because, I'm getting ready to head to the dispensary. So I called into work and said, hey, I'm going to be a little bit late. And then I turned around, came all the way back, flipped around again, and this time I drove towards that U-turn sign, and right in front of the cop, I did a U-turn right in front of him. And sure enough, just like fishing, right? He jumped out from behind that sign, pulled me over, and he goes, you didn't see that no U-turn sign? I said, yeah, of course I saw it. That's why I did a U-turn. And So he was he was pissed that I did that and said that to him. But then he says, your license and registration. So I give him my license. And then as I'm reaching into the glove box to pull out my registration, I go to turn to hand it to him. And it just fell out of my hand and landed on my feet. So as I reach down to grab it, I hear him say, if you don't give me that registration, that's another ticket. So I picked it up and I went, if I don't give this to you, you're going to give me another ticket? He goes, that's right. So I took it and stuck it back in my glove box. So he got me for the no U-turn and for not presenting registration or not carrying whatever it was he said on the ticket. So I got 2 items on the ticket. And so we went to court over this, right? And the first court case was the Pinell County court case where I did the rolling stop. And in that one there, you guys can see the video. I won't spoil that one for you. But basically, to make a long story short, the video depicts the cop pulling me over, having a little conversation with him. Then the first hearing, the hearing where you plead guilty or not guilty, I had a few questions for the judge. And you'll notice, if you listen very carefully, you really, when you're in there, you got to know who you are and be very, like, 3rd grade basic. Okay, you should be so basic in the courtroom that a 3rd grader could understand what it is you're asking or saying. And so when I got into court in that first hearing where you plead guilty or not guilty, this is before the trial, right? And he goes, how do you plead? I go, well, I have a few questions first. And so this is where I'm going to start framing the human beings calling themselves the state, their claims against me. So I call it frame the claim. You want to frame their claim and make it very crystal clear. Because if their claim against you is not crystal clear, I mean, it's the system, man. They use all these legalese. They can make anything mean anything. You're screwed. So you want to make sure you frame that claim crystal clear. So I asked the judge, I said, I have a few questions here. Is it the state's claim against me that I didn't bring my car to a full and complete stop at a stop sign and that I violated their written instrument called traffic law? And there was a couple of words back and forth. Like, I think the judge tried to, because he's never heard someone really frame the claim. He basically reads what the violation is, and then people plead guilty or not guilty, right? And I'm asking a fairly clarifying question here. And he, instead of, it's a question I put forth. The question is the state making the claim that I violated a written instrument called traffic law in not bringing my car to a full and complete stop? And instead of the judge, instead of him registering that question, because it's a question, right? He says, you're not asking a question, you're making a statement or something like that. And I go, how's that not a question? I just asked you, would you agree that the state is making the claim that I violated their written instrument? And he goes, this is where he decided to make his own claim from the bench. And you got to be able to recognize a claim when they're made. So when I said, how's that not a question? I just asked if you agree that their claim against me is I violated their written instrument. And he goes, you're obligated to obey the laws, sir. Well, what is that? What did the judge just do to me? He literally made a claim against me from the bench. So my next job was to separate the judge from the plaintiff. Because to me, when he makes that claim from the bench, and it's the same claim the state's making from the plaintiff's table, that's colluding. That's illegal. It's immoral. It's unethical. So when the judge says you're obligated to obey the laws, I went, sir, I understand what the laws are. I'm a little confused as to who's making the claim against me now. And I was about to say, is it the state making that claim against me, or is it you? And I was going to point at the judge. He was smart enough to catch on real quick, because when I said, is it the state making that claim against me? He puts his chair back and he goes, yes, it's the state of Arizona versus Sean Morley. So now, just to clarify, I said, okay, so It's the state making that claim that I'm obligated to obey their written instrument called traffic law, right? And he goes, yeah. So what I've effectively done there is I've neutered the relationship, the collusion between the state and the judge. The judge can no longer make a claim from the bench that I'm obligated to obey traffic laws, a written instrument called traffic laws. He now has to remain fair and impartial. And now that I've taken that foundational claim, because whenever the state says, you went 75 in a 65 zone, that violates our written instrument, that is the only claim the state submits to the court. And they're relying on the 12 years of government curriculum rammed down our throats that we'll just come into their courtroom and just assume the laws apply. But the reality is, when the state makes that claim against you that you violated their speed limits, there's a foundational claim to that. There's another claim, and it's a foundational claim. And the claim is you're obligated to obey the state's written instrument called traffic laws in the first place. But they never submit that claim to the court because it's always assumed, right? And it's never brought up. I mean, statist, I can run into them today. He goes, of course you're obligated to obey traffic laws. You're in America, or you're in Arizona, or you're in Phoenix. It's always, they just say it because they've been conditioned to say it, like repeat it, like a robot, because the mind has been pounded with that bullshit through 12 years of education, mainstream media, parents. I remember my parents saying, everybody's obligated to obey the traffic laws, so slow down. You know what I mean? Shit like that. Hollywood portrays it that, hey, you're obligated to obey these laws and you broke them, so now we're going to arrest you. You know what I mean? It's conditioning. And so, like, you go and you just walk up to anybody on the street and just say, hey, let me ask you a question. Are you obligated to obey traffic laws, written instruments called traffic laws? And they're going to look at you like you have two heads. But when you start asking them for the facts they've ever relied on that would prove in a court of law that that claim of an obligation to obey is true, they got nothing. It's literally just human beings saying you are obligated to obey our written instrument and you had 12 years of public education, so don't argue against it. This is legitimate. Well, the courts are supposed to seek justice. So they have it, and that's why you got to get off the legalese stuff. If you stay up on the legalese stuff, justice can be manipulated in the state's favor. But if you come down to matters of fact, their legalese it doesn't carry any of the weight that matters of fact do. So if you want to argue on the legalese, you can say, hey, the plaintiff is claiming that I'm obligated to obey their written instrument. It's called traffic law, and I'm the defendant. And of course, you're using plaintiff, you're using defendant, you're using all these legalese terms, jurisdiction. What do they rely on that will prove they have jurisdiction over me?
And actually, Val, it actually comes up to a question that I know you've addressed too, and it's a good question. Joe asked, what if they say you signed your driver's license and agreed to the law? And that's a good question.
Correct. So the prosecutor in the Pinal County case where I did the rolling stop, I was pushing him to, I got him on the video when he pulled me over. Are you claiming that I'm obligated to obey traffic laws? It took me 3 times to ask him while he was standing outside my car, but the third time he goes, yes, you're obligated. And you'll see I post it as soon as he says it. I put up words saying, boom, that is the state's claim that there is an obligation for me to obey the written instrument. When I got to the trial, I wanted to ask him that same question again because the microphone's on, it's on the record. So I wanted him to verbally give me affirmation that I'm obligated, that his claim is I'm obligated to obey traffic laws. So I kept asking him in court. I said, are you of the opinion that is it your position that I'm obligated to obey your written instrument called traffic laws? And the first several times that I asked him in court, instead of answering the question, which is a crystal clear question, a 3-year-old can understand it, a Apparently, this guy's mentality is way below a 3-year-old, because instead of asking a very simple, crystal clear question, he goes, "Sir, you did not bring your car to a full and complete stop that night. I witnessed it. That's all I need." And he just keeps going back to what he did that night, pulling me over. And so then the judge decides to collude in broad daylight when the judge sees that I'm not getting anywhere with this prosecution because he's not answering my question. He's literally trying to evade answering my question. The judge decides she's going to fast forward this case because she wants me in and out of there, right? So she goes, "I'll answer that question for him. Yes." Yes, you're obligated to obey. And I immediately objected because now she's making a claim from the bench against me. You can't have judges in America making claims against Americans from the bench and then ruling on their own claims. It's immoral, it's unethical, and it's criminal. And so I objected. As soon as she goes, "I'll answer that question for him." Yes. And I objected, but she started talking over me. So I just let her talk, let her finish. And then soon after that, that's when the cop said, I'll take the time and answer the question, ma'am, if you don't mind. And so I decided not to go on to the judge yet, because now the prosecution finally decides he wants to answer the question. Now, whatever he decides to present as evidence proving I'm obligated to obey a written instrument called traffic law, it's not just they present it, he presents it, and now I have an opportunity to scrutinize what he's presented. Well, it took about 10 seconds of scrutiny, and his evidence was completely trashed. And what he stated was, when you sign for your driver's license, you sign for it, you agree to abide by all traffic rules and obey peace officers. Just like this, I went, "Okay, so let me ask you a question. If I didn't have a driver's license and I didn't sign for it, could I do rolling stops anywhere I wanted?" And he goes immediately, "Well, you'd get stopped." But what does that tell you right there? It literally tells you that it doesn't matter whether you have the driver's license or not, you're still going to get stopped. In other words, the driver's license does not prove an obligation exists for me to obey the state's written instrument called traffic law. And you could tell, if you listen very carefully, the second I asked him that clarifying question, "Hey, if I didn't have a driver's license, could I do rolling stops everywhere I wanted?" He immediately, knee-jerk reaction, says, what did he say? He said, he goes, "You get stopped." And I say, so the fact is, the driver's license is not the facts you rely on that would prove I am obligated to obey your written instrument called traffic law. And he did a knee-jerk reaction and said, "It was never the facts, sir." And I immediately said, "Sir, I'm asking you to present the facts you rely on." And they couldn't get past this. The judge tried, the prosecutor tried, and I've taken that hidden claim, because it is a hidden claim. They never bring it up. They never bring up the claim that we are obligated to obey their written instrument. They literally rely on the idea that we've been in their education system for 12 years and we should come into that courtroom fully assuming we're obligated to obey it. And now it's just a matter of, can I get a lesser fine? Can I get less time? Is there any way we can get it thrown out? Please, Big Daddy government. Instead of, "Hey, motherfuckers, y'all claim I'm obligated to obey this written instrument." And I'm cool with that if you can present facts that would prove to reasonable human beings will understand it, that we're obligated to obey that written instrument, and they can't. So what happened was I went back and forth with the judge and the plaintiff, and they could not move off of me challenging the foundation of their claim, which the claim that I did a rolling stop is the secondary claim. The foundational claim underneath this claim right here is the claim that you're obligated to obey the written instrument in the first place. So I took that foundational claim, turned on a big spotlight, and went boom, and lit that foundational claim up right in the middle of court, right in front of the judge and right in front of the prosecutor. And I'm not holding their feet to the fire. prove I'm obligated to obey this written instrument. And they couldn't do it. And so, anyways, I got surrounded by 3 cops when they've had enough. And they basically says, "You're done, get out." And I'm going, I can't argue my case. Are you serious? Now they're denying me my right to effectively defend myself. They've literally had enough of me in court.
This is what happens when you stand your ground and ask questions. You guys, I implore you to go not only check out that video, but the other videos on his channel. I mean, he's literally only asking questions. And they drag 3 cops, drag him out of court for asking questions. He's not being disorderly. He's not acting in a way which is contempt in court. He's just sitting in court asking questions, and he has to be removed by 3 officers. Just
3 officers.
You're asking the wrong questions, buddy.
Yeah, and then so they kicked me out. I got mad at the officers. I was yelling at them in the hallway, and then finally I left. And I called back the next morning, and of course, on that video at the very end is the recorded phone call. And I won't spoil it for you, but let's just say.
Yeah, you guys got to check out this video. I'll also add that to the description under his channel. But check it out. I'll put it up on screen here again, too. And this is not the only one that he has like this as well, too. There's a couple other ones. And so I'm excited about this prospect, because I think that this is something that we can all do in our areas and do it. And it's also great because you're challenging, like you say, their fundamental claim. And their fundamental claim, they don't have any evidence for it. They're never going to be able to get any evidence for that, because there is no evidence anywhere that a reasonable person would believe that we sign some contract where we have to obey everything that they say, especially if it's illegal, unconstitutional. And it's funny too. One other thing I'll say, and I want you guys to go check out the videos, and it's in the description here and on screen. It's Top Shelf Anarchy. Everyone go over there, comment, like, share, subscribe. One of the other things that the 2 judges bring up in these cases too, they'll say, well, I just care about the Constitution. Which is funny, because traffic court is not constitutional whatsoever. And what they're doing is patently constitutional. They say they care about the Constitution, and then they kick you out of a courtroom for asking questions. Pretty remarkable.
You're not just asking questions. You're asking them to prove the foundation of their claim that neither the judge nor the prosecutor wanted to bring up on their own. Why did I have to bring that up? Why does that prosecutor get to come into the court with just a secondary claim? Why doesn't the judge ask the prosecutor, if they're not really on the same team and the judge is remaining fair and impartial, you have one human being coming into the courtroom claiming that human being over there violated speeding laws. Why wouldn't a fair and impartial judge ask the human being bringing the claim forth, okay, and is this person obligated to obey that written instrument called speeding laws? And of course, the prosecution is going to go, yes. And then the judge should, if the judge was moral and ethical, should say, okay, please present the court with your facts that would prove the defendant is obligated to obey your written instrument. That should be the first claim to be tackled in court. But they don't even bring it up. They don't want anybody to hear that claim is an option. Because it is. It's literally, if they're bringing forth a claim that you violated our speeding laws. Oh, so I'm looking up and down, looking through all the papers. Well, okay, I don't see any claim that I'm obligated to. You're not claiming I'm obligated to obey your written instrument, right? Yes, you're obligated to obey it. Okay, well, prove it. And that's the problem. I sat at Mesa, which I'm now trespassed from. I can't go into the Mesa Municipal Courthouse because I went in there to film and they trespassed me. It's unbelievable. Whole nother story. But I went in there several times without my camera, just quietly went and sat in court for several morning traffic court sessions. And it's amazing. Once you realize the extortion racket that it really is, and you see people, you parked there 30 minutes too long, pay me. You made a lane change without flipping your signal on, pay me. You went 10 miles an hour over the speed limit on the freeway, pay me. And then every once in a while, they'll get somebody in there with a judge will, all of a sudden he'll want to be empathetic. Oh, I understand you're having trouble paying bills, so I'll tell you what, we'll give you we'll dismiss this case and just don't let it happen again. But everybody else is getting robbed, and not one person will go up to that court and say, "Sir, I understand they're claiming I violated their speeding laws. I'm just wondering, what facts does that human being rely on that would prove him even obligated to obey in the first place?" Now, the judges, they got to remember, they're brought up in the same system we all are. They're conditioned as well. They're conditioned to just assume, hey, if you're in America, these written instruments apply to you. But when you start asking them, all of a sudden it starts like that judge in Pinell County, when he goes, "You're obligated to obey the laws, sir." And I went, "Whoa, wait a minute, sir. I understand what the claim is. A little confused as to who's making that claim against me now. Is it, and now that judge in Pinell County caught on, because he immediately backed off that and says, yes, it's the state versus Sean Morley. It's the state making that claim against you. Not me. I didn't make that claim against you. You know what I mean? Like that judge caught on. Now, the female judge in the Apache Junction case, I don't think she caught on. She got frustrated because she knew it was a legitimate question, but you could tell she's never once ever in her entire career heard that question presented to her. So you can hear her frustrated and trying to spill words, legalese words, as fast as she can to try and confuse me. Well, I'm so done with legalese words, she can spit them at me all day long. They're just going to go ping, ping, ping. And my question is, am I obligated to obey that man's written instrument called traffic law? And she'll start spitting all these legalese words at me, and I'll go, so yes or no. I just go right back to the question I asked. It's a basic question. I can go to any third grader. They'll understand that question. And so that judge, I battled it out with her for 10 minutes. And that's an interesting case. So that was the first hearing with that judge in Apache Junction, where I did intentionally did the illegal U-turn. And I battled with her back and forth for 10 minutes. Eventually, one cop, he was actually a cool cop. He was trying to keep it calm and cool. And he was like, okay, and this is the thing. The cop came up to me and says, okay, you made your point, but we got to get you out of here. And I knew it wasn't going anywhere else because she was just going to schedule for a trial, which was cool. I'm ready to go to trial, but I wanted her, to make some kind of affirmation that, hey, that's a legitimate question. But you could tell she was so indoctrinated. She knew it was a legitimate question, but she was never going to admit it. It got so bad that right before I was taken out of there, she goes, "Sir, I'm just doing or honoring my oath to the Constitution and trying to do my job." Like, she knew that she couldn't get out from having to have that question answered. The interesting thing in that case was when I came for trial several weeks later, I walked into the courthouse, and the first person I saw right across the way was the cop that pulled me over. Now, if you ask me, are you 100% sure that was the cop? Well, unless he has a twin brother, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the cop. I didn't go up and talk to him, but he looked identical. So 98% sure that was the cop. And so as I was going through the Fourth Amendment violation of security, I saw that cop walk towards the courtroom that I was going to go to. And there was a bunch of people standing in front of that courtroom waiting for the doors to open for the morning session. They all got extortion tickets too, right? So I grabbed my stuff from security. I walked up and I sat on the bench right in front of that door. And the cop was a little bit down the hall sitting on a bench. And the doors opened up. Everybody walked in. I walked in. The cop never came into the courtroom for some weird reason. Now, the other thing that kind of weirded me out was there was 13 or 14 other people ahead of me, or that were, I shouldn't say it, I didn't realize they were all ahead of me at that point, but I was the last one on the docket, which was weird. And they went through everybody's, it was the same thing that I've sat in Mesa courts when I would observe traffic court. Same thing. You sped, pay us. You parked there too long, pay us. You did this, pay us. And one by one, they were getting extorted and go pay at the window outside. And so everybody's leaving. Now there's just me, the judge, and I don't know if it's a court reporter or just a judge's aide. I don't know. The person that's sitting next to the judge. There's only 3 of us in the courtroom. Well, 4 if you include the bailiff. But 3 people that are part of this, you know, whatever you call it, fuckade, right? And the judge looks up at me and he goes, Sean Morley. I go, yep, that's me. He goes, well, and immediately just says, well, the officer hasn't shown up yet. We're going to give him about another 10 minutes. And if he doesn't show up, we'll dismiss the case. And I immediately said, sir, he's out in the hallway right here. And so I got up and I went out to the hallway to go, hey, you coming in? And when I walked out of the hallway, it's empty. Nobody's there. Nobody. They're gone. And so I looked around a little bit going, what the hell? Where'd he go? He's got to get in here. And I'm looking around. Nobody. He's gone, dude. Gone. And I'm scratching my head and I walked into the courtroom and the judge had left the bench and walked into a back room. I don't know what they got in that back room, but whatever. He came back out a few minutes later and I go, sir, I don't know where he went. He was out there when I got here. And he goes, well, it's 10 minutes later. He hasn't shown up. So case dismissed. I was just like, what the hell just happened here? And the only thing I can think of is I put the foundation of the state's claim in broad daylight in the first hearing. And I don't think that female judge has ever heard that foundational claim. I think she probably thought about it for a while afterwards and kind of colluded with the judge that was overseeing the trial and just says, hey, let's do something. You don't want to argue that case in this courtroom because I don't know how to get by it. Because she was probably wondering, how do I get, he has a right to ask that question. How do I get by satisfying that question in court? And I think she finally came to the conclusion that we just really shouldn't even entertain this. Let's just dismiss the case. Cop doesn't show up. And so I don't know whether that's what happened or not, but that cop was there. I saw him out there and he never came into the courtroom. So I don't know if when I was in the courtroom, someone else went out there and talked to him. Like, hey, you might want to leave on this one. That's the only thing I can think of.
I'd be willing to bet that's the case because it's not just with you, but other people that I know also too, they'll wait until if they know that you know your shit, then they're going to wait till everybody's gone and cleared out. And I just want to jump to the chat real quick. If you have some questions for Val, we'll get a couple questions for Val. Val has some valuable time, and I won't take up much more of it. So if you got some questions, but before you get some questions, press 1 in the chat if you're going to try this out, because I don't think, I mean, I know it's me. I hope we're getting the gravity and the magnitude of the situation. This is something that could, if we all start doing this, we could literally eliminate the traffic courts. And then guess what else? And maybe, who knows, and maybe DCYF, CPS, maybe IRS next, right? So,
Hey, Will. So I just figured out how to pull up the chats, but when I pull up the chats, I can't see the video screens kind of underneath it. But okay. There's one guy here in the chat that says, I guess his screen name is The Tribe.
Shout out to The Tribe.
And he says, Val, that's what you call a win? I'm assuming he's referring to having the case dismissed, correct?
I'm guessing so. I'm guessing. So, yeah, if you guys have questions or comments, make sure they're very, very specific, okay?
So if compliment on Val's good dictation, articulation of legalese. Yes, so The Tribe. Yes, that's exactly what I would call the win. The state, the foundation of the state's claim against me, there's 2 claims, okay? There's the claim that I made the illegal U-turn. Well, 3 claims, really. I made the illegal U-turn, and I didn't present my registration. So those are 2 claims being made against me. The 3rd claim, which is really the first claim, because it's the foundation of the state's claim against me. And the claim is, I am obligated to obey the state's written instrument called traffic laws just because I'm physically here in the geographical location of America, of Arizona, and ultimately of Mesa, Arizona. And so if that's going to be the foundation of their claim, well, then the secondary claims, which are the illegal U-turn and the non-presentation of a registration, those claims don't matter until we can first settle whether the foundational claim that an obligation exists for me to obey their written instrument called traffic laws in the first place is legitimate. And it can only be legitimate if the human beings that are making that claim against you, which you're a human being as well, if they can present facts that would prove to reasonable human beings, and what that means is a reasonable human being has to be able to look at those facts and go, that makes sense. I get it now. I understand how that obligation was created. So if the state fails to present the facts proving that obligation actually exists for me to obey traffic laws, a written instrument called traffic law, then the case must be dismissed for lack of evidence. It's the only moral thing to do. It's the only ethical thing to do, and it's the only non-criminal thing to do. It's the non-tyrannical thing to do. It's the just thing to do. If they don't have evidence proving you're obligated to obey their written instruments, they have to dismiss the case for lack of evidence. So yes, if you can get it dismissed for lack of evidence, you have won. You've done exactly what you came there to accomplish. Now, when, for example, when that prosecutor attempted to use the driver's license, this is a prime example of it has to be able to be understood by reasonable people, right? So people will say, like the prosecutor said, when you signed your driver's license and you got your driver's license, that was when you agreed to abide by our written instruments called traffic laws. Well, it's got to hold up under scrutiny. It's a simple, and it's always best to attack the state with rational questions. Don't make statements. Don't make claims. So when he says, when you sign the driver's license, you agreed to abide by all traffic laws. Well, identify it. What is that? It's another claim. He's claiming that me signing a driver's license creates an obligation for me to obey his written instrument called traffic law. So a simple question to destroy that claim is, so if I didn't have a driver's license and I didn't sign for a driver's license, I could do rolling stops anywhere I wanted? He'd still pull me over, which proves that that driver's license is not the fact that they rely on that would prove I am obligated to obey their written instrument, because it doesn't matter whether I have the driver's license or not. If I speed or I do rolling stops, they're going to pull me over. And so anything they present as facts, you got to remember, when they make that presentation, they're just making another claim, and you as a human being have every right to question their claims. I always say, frame the claim, identify the claim and frame the claim, and then attack it with rational questions, logical questions. You don't need to use all these, if the judge and the prosecutor tries to confuse you with using, well, that's personam jurisdiction, and what you're referring to is subject jurisdiction, and that doesn't apply in that case. What the fuck are y'all talking about? That's a human being making a factual claim against me that I, as a human being, am obligated to obey that human being's written instrument called traffic law. Keep it simple. Keep it so simple that a third grader can understand it. The judge can't force you to use legalese. The judge understands what you're asking, whether you'll admit it or not. And eventually, they have no other choice but to no longer ignore that question. Because if a third grader can understand it, you know damn well that that judge and the prosecutor understand it as well. They just don't want to have to deal with answering that question because they can't. Now, the difference here is, I want to make a very stark distinction here. The real difference here is statutory law versus natural common universal laws. So, am I obligated not to go and punch my neighbor in the face? Yeah. I mean, That would be assault in common law. And these are just laws that we all instinctively know are wrong. You don't need to have a politician write it out on a piece of paper. You know that murdering another human being's wrong, raping another human being's wrong, assaulting another human being's wrong, committing fraud against another human being is wrong, stealing from another human being is wrong. We all know as human beings what's right or wrong. So if you created a victim, then you have violated common, natural, universal laws that every human being on the planet is just naturally obligated to obey. We don't even need to discuss whether we're obligated to obey it. You just do unto others as you would do unto you. It's just natural. Compare that to statutory law. And a lot of people, especially politicians, will lump these two categories of laws together as if they're the same. They're not the same. Statutory law is victimless crimes. Just literally things that weren't crimes, but they are now because some politician decided to write it on a piece of paper. Hey, you know what? People smoke cannabis, and I don't like cannabis, so let's make it illegal. So they write up a piece of paper, right? Or type it up now, I guess, on a computer, whatever. They create it. They create this law. It's just man-made. There's no victim. And they just say, okay, all the human beings in this geographical location are obligated to obey my new statutory law called cannabis prohibition laws. Now, if we catch you using cannabis, you violated our law, and now you go to jail for 30 years. Now, we've all been conditioned to be like, hey, if they voted on the law and the president signed it, well, then now, yeah, we're just obligated to obey it. Bullshit. Those are human beings. That's all they are. They're making a claim against you that you're obligated to obey their cannabis prohibition laws. You have every right as a human being. It's a human right to put that claim in front of a judge and saying, hey, this dumbass over here calling himself government, he's saying I'm obligated to obey this written instrument right here called cannabis prohibition laws. I want you to force this dumbass to present facts that would prove to rational human beings I am obligated to obey his written instrument. And they got nothing. So statutory law, you can defend yourself all day long. If it comes to common, natural, universal laws, you're a criminal. And it's just the way it is. Two different laws. Don't lump these two together. One is natural, universal, applies to every human being at conception, and doesn't really no longer apply to you until you're dead. Statutory laws, they only apply to you if people do a little religious ritual called voting, and all of a sudden you're obligated to obey it. Listen, I was taught to assume that obligation is true. And I've always assumed it my whole life, like we all have. But the reality is, when you're trying to take my money or take my freedom, I'm not going to assume anything anymore. I'm going to need to see the facts proving that stupid claim to be true. And I have every human right to ask those questions. And that's something judges can't get around, prosecutors can't get around, but you can't play on their field of legalese. You've got to play on the platform of matters of fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And like I said, I'm dense, and it took me a little while to get it, but it's something that is so fundamental. We just assume that we have to do this stuff. It's built into us, like through all those methods that you talked about. And I'm glad that I finally get it. And now I'm looking forward to people here in the future in the chat that are exposed to this and watching afterwards. I want you guys to do your own videos like this and send them to Val and I. Put hashtag. What hashtag should they put for you, Val, on Instagram?
They can put hashtag Val Venis, VENIS, and hashtag Top Shelf Anarchy, and hashtag Money Shot.
Money Shot, yes, exactly. So yeah, and I want to see how this works out, because honestly, I think this is an incredibly brilliant idea, and it's something that anybody can go ahead and use. And I would recommend. I wouldn't recommend them, but I would recommend. I would recommend you guys go out there and do this and see how it works. Because if we can eliminate traffic court, then we can start with the other bigger boys after that. We can knock down all the other alphabet agencies. We can do it through non-violence, and I think that's Awesome. I did want to
Absolutely. Now we should go ahead and make something clear, though. We're all human beings. Now, I notice, and you got to remember, I talk about this stuff with people that have been conditioned to be statists, the same way I used to be when I was a teenager. And when I bring it up, it's weird to them at first. Like, what do you mean you're not obligated to obey traffic laws? And I never make the claim that you're not obligated to obey traffic laws. Don't make claims in court. And the judge is a master at trying to trick you into making claims. You don't want to make claims in court. So before I get that's an important part. Before we get to that, I want to make it clear. Very important point. But before we get to that, I want to state that I'm not against safe driving. I think we all have obligations as human beings. My only obligation that I know of while I'm driving my car is to drive in a way that's not going to harm anybody or is going to have the least risk or reasonable risk driving where I'm not going to harm anybody. They're human beings driving around and we need to drive safely. But to create a statutory law that says, okay, this road, we're going to put a sign out on it that says 65 miles an hour. And if you're doing 70, that gives us an excuse to pull you over and rob you. Doesn't matter that you were doing 70 or 75 peacefully and safely, and nobody called the police. It's not like you flew by somebody like they were standing still and they go, hey, this guy's flying around. No, if he's doing 65, you probably slowly went by him. He doesn't give a shit. Nobody gives a shit except for the cop that looks at you as a bank, and he's going to take your money on behalf of the state. So I'm obligated, we all are, to drive as safe as we possibly can within reason, right? So I'm not against having speed signs on the roads that are suggestions, because in a free country, you can say, okay, this is a freeway here. I don't want to say governing body, because in this fictitious world, there'd be a representative body, right? As opposed to a governing body. And the representative body, they did all the tests. They did the tests themselves, speed test, and they got 3 signs, for example. Hey, this is the suggested speed at nighttime. This is the suggested speed when it's raining. And this is the suggested speed if conditions are good and it's daytime. I think having speed signs as suggestions, most moral, rational people that want to live are going to take those signs into consideration, knowing that the science has been done. So 65 miles an hour, okay, but if everybody's going 75 and it's done safely, that shouldn't be an excuse for statists to come along and rob you of money. So don't get me wrong. I'm not against being responsible human beings. I'm against state-sanctioned extortion rackets, which is exactly what traffic law is. And so I want to make that clear. Just because I'm against statutory laws being used as an extortion racket, I'm all for safe driving. So I just want to make that clear. But the other more important thing is when you get into court, you want to make sure you never make claims. All you are doing is challenging the one foundational claim that was hidden until you pulled it out. You literally got to pull it out because the judge ain't going to put that claim on the table. The prosecutor ain't going to put that claim on the table, but it's there. The only thing the prosecutor is going to put on the table is the fact you went 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. It's up to you to say, okay, I understand that there's a claim I'm obligated to obey this written instrument called traffic law. I just need to see the facts proving that's true. Now you've taken that down.
To you, Val, what do you believe the laws don't apply to you? They're going to try to trick you into stating your claim.
Yes. So sometimes the judge might say something stupid like, oh, I get it. You're one of those sovereign citizens that doesn't think the laws apply to them. Now, it might be really easy to slip up here and say, well, I'm not sovereign, but no, the laws don't apply to me. If you make claims like that, the judge isn't stupid. He's a master at manipulating language. That's why I don't play on the legalese language, because they'll manipulate it and you'll be fucked. So if the judge, remember how I said identify the claim and frame the claim, but also identify claims that the judge decides you're making. So if the judge were to say to me, oh, I get it, you're one of those sovereign citizens that doesn't think the law applies to them. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, don't put words in my mouth. Number one, I never claimed I was a sovereign citizen, which is an oxymoron to begin with, but that's a different story. Number two, that human being over there sitting at that table, and you're pointing right at the plaintiff's table. And remember, talk like a third grader. Don't call him the plaintiff. Don't call him the prosecutor, because those are legal terms. Call him a human being. That human being over there came into your courtroom and point to the judge and made a claim against me, a human being, that I'm obligated to obey his written instrument called traffic law. That's the claim before you, Judge. I didn't come in here making claims. Maybe the law does apply to me. I don't know. But I have yet to see facts proving that claim to be true. And because he's trying to take my money, I ain't assuming that claim is true. I'm going to need to see facts proving it's true. And you have every human right to know the cause and the nature of the charges brought against you, which includes the foundation of the state's claim against you that you're obligated to obey in the first place. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does now, finally, after I've heard it like 9 times. And I can't wait to try this out. Also want to say quickly.
And I'll tell you this, Will, the more you hear it, the more things will click, because that's the way it happened to me. It's the more I heard it, the more I kept thinking about it, the more you put the pieces of the puzzle together one after another over time, right? And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's such a simple concept that everybody, including me, I overlooked it for over 20 years. You overlook the simplicity of it. And that's what people really need to understand. It's so simple, it's easy to overlook it and to shoot right past it. And what you're overlooking is the foundation of the state's claim against you, that you're obligated to obey their written instruments in the first place.
Yeah, and I just want to address the chat real quick. I do got one.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
I got one question from the chat and one for myself too. And I just want to say, sometimes these comments, if you try to put a link in there, it'll automatically get deleted. I do have moderators. Moderators, please don't delete anybody or ban anybody from the channel unless I'll say so after they've been belligerent like 9 times. If it's like a porn bot, yeah, you can delete them. But if it's not, just let them get the questions. So yeah, one of the questions I had was, what's your opinion? Do you think we'll be able to avoid a civil war in the winter? And I guess I'll just make that a more general question too. What do you foresee happening in the future? I mean, we've got so many different factors at play. It's a very scary world we're living in. So what do you see? One, do you think that we can avoid a civil war in the winter or at all? And then a more general question, what do you see looking into your crystal ball?
Man, I really don't know. I don't put anything by government. I know they want to enslave us with a digital fiat currency on a centralized blockchain, and that's mind-boggling scary right there. Because if anybody knows anything about the Bitcoin blockchain and decentralized blockchains, you really grasp the enormous amount of power that's available to private sector humans now to be completely free from banks. But when you understand the power and the opportunity that the Bitcoin blockchain is presenting to humanity, you also see the other side of the coin, that a centralized blockchain controlled by statist governments goes the other way. When I talk about a centralized blockchain being able to enslave every human being on the planet, I'm talking about, like, the Bitcoin blockchain has the ability, it's a learning curve. People don't understand it yet. More and more people are beginning to understand it. But the Bitcoin blockchain legitimately has the power to free all of humanity from the central banking's fiat currency scam. That, as much power as Bitcoin has, in the terms of being decentralized and offering freedom and liberty to the people. A centralized blockchain will lock your ass down, and every breath you take will be recorded on a centralized blockchain that the government will be able to have full access to. And a prime example is this: programmable money hooked up to your health care and everything. This is just one instance. Let's say you go to your doctor and you get a checkup and it turns out you have high blood pressure all of a sudden. Well, now your money is programmable. That high blood pressure checkup record now gets recorded to the centralized blockchain. And guess what happens? The money you spend at the grocery store will be denied if you're trying to buy steak or you're trying to buy anything deemed unhealthy and that may aggravate your blood pressure. Programmable money, guys. That is the power of centralized blockchain. It looks to enslave every human being on the planet. And so right now it's a war going on between, like, you remember the old Betamax versus VHS war that went on, and eventually VHS won those wars. This is decentralized cryptocurrency and blockchains for assets fighting in a war with centralized blockchains and assets. And it's a scary thing coming down the pipeline, guys.
Val, you're absolutely right with that. I mean, I've been calling myself blockchain technology, quantum computing technology, the new Wild West, because it's those two forces that you have at play. And people are working, they have their Fed coins, right? That they want the USD tether coins, and then they have things that are pirate chain, which are completely anonymous. And then you add on the overlay, like you're talking about, with the social credit score, which is already in play, with the advanced spying, and then the hero Elon Musk is going to Neuralink us all, so we'll all be connected to the blockchain. So it's a very scary future. But I think if we get enough people out here, and these are why these conversations are so important, is because you won't hear this type of conversation on Tucker Maddow or any of the cable channels. They're not talking about this. So this is why it's very important for you guys to share these videos. I did wanted to ask you, well, actually more invite you, and I know it's late in the year to invite you, but I want to invite you and everybody else to non-violently stand with us September 11th at Ground Zero. I'll be back there again. I want to we got over 100 people going, which is cool. I know you're out there. It's kind of late. You may not be able to do that, but we're going to go over there. So if everybody in the chat can spread the word about that, that will be very big. So no matter what you guys do out there, keep it nonviolent and share the word. I mean, I've gotten so many and on this channel, I mean, I've interviewed CIA whistleblowers, diplomats, all these brainiacs, and I'm getting the most positive content feedback on what you're saying here. So I know that this is very powerful. So I want you guys, we're going to do, hopefully, if Val will allow, we can do another video coming up very soon. And I want you guys in the meantime to go ahead and to try this out for yourself. And we can get some people on here and share their experience. And remember, if the cop is pulling you over, I would just say this from my opinion: cops pulling you over, make sure you're filming. It's okay to be polite. Be polite. And when you get in the court, you want to frame that claim. Don't let anybody
frame the claim.
Don't
frame
let
the claim.
And just keep asking the same question. People are going to try to deter you. They're going to say, "Well, are you saying this? You're saying that?" No, I'm just asking the question. I'm just asking the same question over and over again until they don't want to hear it anymore. And I think slowly but surely we can do this, and it'll have a change. So, Val, thank you again very much for coming on, brother. Before you go, I want to promote Top Shelf Anarchy. It is in the description right here. I want you guys to all go over as soon as this video ends and go and watch these videos too. Because as Val said, a lot of this stuff, especially people like me, it takes us a little longer to get. So go watch the videos and go check out what they have. Like he's even got the recordings from inside the courtroom, and then he records a phone call. So record everything, your entire interaction, and go over there and see how it's done. And then once you've got it down to a T, you go out and try that. Val, what are other ways that people can get in touch with you? I know they banned you off Twitter and besmirched your name and lied on you. But what are the places that people can get a hold of you now, Val?
So I'm on Gab. I'm on Gab now. My Gab account is at Top Shelf Anarchy, and then also at Val Venus ENT, short for entertainment, right? So I got two of them on Gab. I got Top Shelf Anarchy and at Val Venus ENT. Also, of course, my YouTube channel, of course, with the Top Shelf Anarchy. And then Facebook as well, Top Shelf Anarchy on there. I also on Minds. I got an account on Minds and on Odyssey, guys. Odyssey is a decentralized. Odyssey is built on the Library decentralized blockchain. It's at the future YouTube version, or it's the future video version of YouTube platform, but decentralized. And so it's a really great platform of Top Shelf Anarchy on Odyssey as well. Here's one thing. Dirty Mike says, please ask Val if it would work in Canada as well. Well, Dirty Mike, before I get going here, just to let you know, I do have a couple of videos on my Top Shelf Anarchy channel where I'm grilling Canadian revenue tax agents. And it's incredibly telling. I'm asking the same question. It's your claim that I'm obligated to obey a written instrument called the Canada Revenue Tax Act, correct? I won't spoil it for you. Go in and listen to those videos. It's quite eye-opening. Yes, it can happen in any courtroom anywhere around the world where the judge has to remain ethical and moral. And when I mean remain ethical and moral, what I'm saying is the judge can't say you're not allowed to ask that question. Well, of course you are. It's the foundation of the state's claim against you. You have every right to challenge that. So when I say keep it simple, so simple that a third grader can understand it, when you keep it that simple, you're taking away the judge's ability to manipulate weird words to fuck you all up. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Canada, Australia, England, the United States. If you have a statist, a prosecutor for the state, he's just a human being. Look at it as the emperor wears no clothes. When I say keep it simple, keep it so simple that what you see is that human being is making a claim against this human being, that I'm obligated to obey that human being's written instrument. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a Canadian court, an American court, an Australian court, or a British court, doesn't matter. The judge now has to force the state to satisfy that question that has been put on the table right in broad daylight, right in the middle of the court. It's no longer a hidden claim that no one ever talks about. You yank that shit out of its darkness and you shined a spotlight on it right in the middle of court. Now that claim has to be proven. Does that make sense? Doesn't matter what country you're in.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, unless you're in a country where it doesn't matter how logical and moral and reasonable you sound, we got an axe and you're going to put your head on that chopping block. Unless you're in a country like that, you need weapons. Our weapon right here is just keeping it simple and using morality, ethics, fact, and logic. Those are our weapons.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll add in here too is when you guys listen, Val does a great job of saying, okay, so even though you have no evidence, you're still going to continue me another time as a human being. Make me take another day out of work. Wake up early. So he also appeals to rhetoric. He's very rhetorically sound. I don't even know if that's rhetorically sound, but he understands how to use the words to kind of reach at people's minds and their hearts simultaneously. So it's very powerful. I want you guys to go check that out. It's Top Shelf Anarchy. Links in the description. God willing, we'll be talking to Val again very soon. But please keep up with Val. And also get Val's channel out. Share all this stuff because this is something that I think can really, really change the whole world. This is the little ball that we get rolling that can turn into a big snowball that could defeat these tyrants. And yes, please do not try this in North Korea. or China.
Yeah, don't try North
Save
Korea.
that for us over here for now, and then we'll get to you guys. Val, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining. Go check out Val's channel right now. We're going to keep bringing you the best content. We're going to stay in touch with Val, and stay tuned because sooner than later, I'm going to be out in Arizona. We're going to be doing some audits. We're going to be smoking some Canagars, and I'm going to get Val a very own snapback and a fake mic. Oh, not 2 for 2. I couldn't catch that one. Real news. Guys, have a great night. Peace out, everyone. Love you.